"Ma'am, I didn't know I'd ever see you again." Matt stood just a few steps away, his eyes locked on mine, even as the entire wedding hall turned toward him. His words sliced through the ceremony like a blade through silk. Somewhere a glass shattered. Emily, the bride, went pale, her face drained of all colour. My mother froze, lips parted but voiceless. No one knew what was happening. And me? I sat perfectly still, in a simple pale blue dress. My spine straight as if I were back on parade, eyes fixed and unblinking. But inside me, a storm that had been caged for years was clawing to be let loose. I never imagined that my first return in nearly 2 decades would be introduced by the groom addressing the family's so-called disgrace. Not a single person in that room. Not my mother, not my sister, not any of the old friends exchanging whispers, knew who I had become over the past 15 years. They didn't see the scars on my back. They didn't know how many souls had died beside me. They only remembered the 17-year-old girl cast out of her home for a crime she didn't commit. I thought I'd grown used to pain, thought it had dulled over time, like a callus over an old wound. But the moment Matt spoke, everything shifted. This wasn't shame I carried anymore. It was theirs. And for the first time, they were about to face a truth they had never prepared to hear. And this was only the beginning. I used to think I was born invisible. Not literally, of course. I had a name, Jessica Ann Miles, and a face that looked too much like Dad's to be ignored entirely. But in our house, being seen was never the same as being noticed. Emily, my younger sister, sparkled like sunlight on water, loud, golden, impossible to miss. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who got good grades but never the loudest applause. At age 9, I won a county-wide essay contest about what freedom means to me. I still remember the smell of the library where I typed it, the librarian's proud smile, the way I held the certificate all the way home, clutching it like treasure. I handed it to Mom. She glanced at it, said, "That's nice, honey," and then turned to ask Emily how her dance recital went. Emily didn't even win anything, but she twirled in the kitchen and got a round of applause. By middle school, I stopped trying. When you grow up in someone else's shadow, even your own light feels out of place. I found silence to be safer, solitude to be simpler. I started staying late at school just to be around teachers who knew my name. Coach Simmons in track, Ms. Bell in history. They saw me. They praised me. Sometimes that was enough. But nothing hurt like family did. Birthdays forgotten, school plays missed. One time I broke my arm during gym and waited 2 hours in the nurse's office because Mum lost track of time. She was at Emily's modelling shoot. Still, I never fought back. I told myself it wasn't malice. It was distraction. Misplaced love. Maybe if I just tried harder, they'd see me. Really see me. I didn't know then that being seen wouldn't come from shrinking smaller or shining brighter. It would come from disappearing completely. By the time I turned 16, I had become an expert in erasing myself. Emily had grown into the family's golden girl, captain of the cheer team, voted most likely to marry rich, and seemingly allergic to humility. Our mother beamed at her like she was the second coming of Jackie Kennedy. "That girl's going places," she'd say, flicking her cigarette with pride. As for me, I was the other one, sometimes even just her sister. Then came the year of the wedding theft. That was the moment everything broke. It was spring and we were helping Aunt Lorraine plan her second wedding, an over-the-top garden affair that was more about appearances than love. There was a cash envelope, over $3,000, for the final deposit on the catering. Mum kept it in her bedroom drawer. One day it disappeared. There wasn't even a conversation, no investigation, no second thought. Mum came into my room, eyes cold, voice flat. "Just tell me why you did it, Jessica. We'll figure it out." I didn't understand what she meant. Then she showed me the empty drawer, and I knew Emily had been snooping there days before. I'd seen her heard her, but no one asked her anything. I opened my mouth to speak. Then I saw Emily standing behind Mum, silently, eyes daring me, and in that moment I broke the final rule of invisibility. I spoke up. "I didn't take it," I said. "Emily was in your room too." That earned me a slap. Not from Emily, from Mom. "Don't you dare try to drag your sister down with you." The words sliced deeper than the sting on my cheek. I felt something shift, like a door locking shut forever. There would be no fairness in this house, no truth, only favourites and fall guys. I didn't steal the money, but I was told to return it anyway, $3,000 I didn't have. That summer, I worked double shifts at a diner, skipping senior prom, to pay off a debt that didn't belong to me. Emily never said a word, and I never forgot. After the wedding money incident, I stopped being a daughter. Oh, I still lived in that house, still did the dishes, still picked up groceries with exact change, still got A's in school, but I wasn't hers anymore. I was just a boarder in someone else's version of home. The silence between Mum and me stretched for months. She'd talk to Emily in front of me like I wasn't there. And Emily? She basked in the aftermath. More space, more praise, more everything. I kept thinking it would pass. That maybe if I graduated top of my class, things would reset. That if I got into college on a scholarship, Mom would look at me and see something worth saving. Instead, when the acceptance letter came from the Air Force Academy, Mom barely blinked. "Military? So you're giving up on a real education?" Emily laughed. "Well, at least you'll be good at folding sheets." I didn't respond. I didn't cry. Something inside me had already dried up. That summer I left. No party, no goodbye dinner, no hugs at the door. I packed one suitcase and a picture of Dad, the only person who'd ever told me I could do more than disappear. He died when I was 10, and sometimes I wondered if that's when Mom had stopped seeing me altogether. At the base, things were different. Structure made sense. Rules didn't shift overnight. There was pain, sure, and isolation too, but it was clean pain, earned, honest. And for the first time, I learned what it meant to be judged, not for who your family thinks you are, but for what you do. I ran until my legs burned. I memorized protocols in the dark. I slept with a rifle closer than I ever slept near love. In that crucible, I began to forge someone new. Not Jessica the gate guard, not the thief, not the invisible daughter. Something harder, sharper, unshakable. I rose faster than anyone expected. Maybe because I had nothing else to fall back on. Maybe because when you've been doubted your entire life, proving people wrong becomes second nature. I made it through officer training on sheer grit. I was deployed twice before my 26th birthday. I led reconnaissance missions in sandstorms, coordinated airlifts under fire, and once negotiated the evacuation of 70 civilians while my right arm bled through my uniform. My team called me Iron Jess. I never corrected them. It sounded better than the other daughter. But none of that mattered to my family, because they never knew. I never told them. Not when I made captain, not when I got the Bronze Star, not even when the Pentagon sent me a personal commendation. There were no calls home, no postcards, no chance to say, Look what I became. Why? Because I needed them not to know. I needed my value to exist outside their recognition. Their ignorance gave me freedom. I wasn't seeking validation anymore. I was building something stronger than approval. Still, on quiet nights overseas, I sometimes reread old letters. One from my grandmother before she died. You don't have to be the loudest to be the strongest. One from an old commanding officer. You walk like someone who's had to disappear before, but we see you now. And then there was Matt's letter, folded and refolded until the edges frayed, written in 2012. One deployment, one night, one truth we never unpacked. He thanked me for saving his life. He didn't say much else, but it was enough to stay with me. Even now, as I sat at his wedding, pretending to be a nobody, I wondered if he remembered what I had never forgotten. The night under desert stars, the heat of adrenaline, the look in his eyes that didn't see a gate guard, but a woman who could lead men into fire. The invitation didn't come to me directly. It showed up in the mailbox of my old apartment complex, forwarded twice, then hand-delivered by my former neighbour Doris, now 78 and partially blind. "I didn't want to open it," she said, "but it smelled expensive." And it was. Heavy cardstock, gold foil edges, a pressed wax seal that screamed Emily. I turned it over in my hands like it might bite. "Emily Rose Miles and Matthew Grayson invite you to witness their union Saturday, June 17th at the Belrose Estate, Black Tie. Adults only." I read it 3 times before noticing the envelope had no return address. No note, no apology, no pretense of reconciliation. Just a date, a place, a command. Part of me laughed. Another part of me felt nothing. I hadn't heard from Emily in 13 years. The last I saw of her was on a social media feed someone shoved in my face during a base holiday party, her posing on a yacht. Captioned, "Living my best life, no gate guards allowed." I remember turning the phone face down, pouring myself another drink, and walking back into the sandstorm. And yet, here it was, a thread from the past tugging at the corner of my carefully stitched armour. I didn't RSVP, didn't call, didn't message anyone. But that night, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside, the letter from Matt. Faded ink. Still folded the same way he'd left it in my cot the morning after Kandahar. He hadn't signed it with love, just initials. Still, there was something in the way he'd written my name, Jess, that had stayed with me longer than it should have. Now he was marrying Emily. Of all people. I stared at the envelope again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something unfamiliar. Not grief, not pride, curiosity. What did they think I'd do? Decline? Ignore it? Crawl back quietly and blend into the wallpaper? No, I would go. Not because they wanted me to. Because this time, I wanted to see them. The drive took 10 hours. I didn't rush. I left at sunrise, coasting down through Virginia and into North Carolina with nothing but black coffee, a burner phone, and silence as my company. I didn't wear my uniform. I packed no medals. I left my rank locked in a drawer next to a passport no one ever saw. Instead, I brought a plain navy blue dress. Low heels, minimal makeup, hair in a bun, tight, clean, unremarkable. I was going as a ghost, not to haunt them, just to witness, maybe to bury something. I arrived the day before the wedding and checked into a motel 5 miles from the Belrose estate. The woman at the desk offered me complimentary champagne. I declined. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed and reread Matt's letter one more time. "You don't have to carry this alone. Some debts can't be paid in blood, only in memory. Thank you." No name, no promise, just guilt wrapped in gratitude. And now he was marrying my sister. I didn't feel rage. What I felt was finality, like a chapter-long overdue had come to collect itself. Early the next morning, I stood in front of the mirror in my dress. My reflection looked calm, too calm, like someone who had seen so much chaos that even this, walking into the lion's den uninvited, barely registered as risk. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I didn't bring a gift. I didn't even bring my badge. I did, however, bring one thing. A letter addressed to Emily, unsent, dated 7 years ago. 1 page, unsigned. Inside were 4 words. "You never fooled me." I slipped it into my clutch and drove toward the estate, where old wounds waited to be opened not with violence, but with silence. Where the girl they once called invisible was about to be impossible to ignore. The Belrose estate looked exactly like the kind of place that tried too hard to forget it was built on stolen land. White stone columns, oversized fountains, manicured hedges trimmed into the initials of the couple, E and M. The staff wore black gloves. The valet didn't ask for my name. He just took one look at my decade-old sedan and pointed to the back lot without a word. That was fine. I didn't come to impress. I came to watch. I walked past the registration table. No one stopped me. My name wasn't on the guest list. I knew it wouldn't be. But the girl behind the table was young, flustered, and assumed I belonged to someone important. That's the thing about confidence. It masks truth better than any forged badge. Inside the main hall, chandeliers dripped crystal. The air reeked of roses and self-congratulation. Everyone wore smiles stretched too tight. Champagne flutes clinked over rehearsed laughter. No one noticed me. Until someone did. A woman near the bar, hair blonde, dress coral pink, same high-pitched voice I remembered from childhood sleepovers. "Wait, Jessica?" I turned slowly. Her face wrinkled in polite confusion. "Oh my God! It is you! Wow, I didn't know you were still around." Still around, like I was a discontinued model. "Hi, Rachel," I said, calm. "It's been a while." She smiled too wide. "Emily never mentioned you were coming." "Guess she forgot," I replied, sipping water. Rachel looked at me the way one looks at a ghost you're not sure you believe in. "So, what are you doing these days? Still in, the military or something like that?" She laughed awkwardly. "That's cool. Wow, you look different. Good different." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. People like Rachel didn't want real answers. They wanted to place you in a mental box and move on. Anyway, I better get back. So many familiar faces, huh? You're at table 19, I think. She pointed toward the back, the far back. Next to the kitchen doors and an ice bucket. Perfect. Table 19 wasn't just in the back, it was practically exile. I sat between a recently divorced uncle who reeked of mouthwash and a florist who kept checking her phone. No one made eye contact for more than 3 seconds. I was close enough to hear the clatter of dishes from the kitchen, but far enough that no one could accidentally include me in a toast photo. Perfect. Across the room, Emily shimmered. Her dress sparkled like fresh snow under spotlight. She was in her element, floating from table to table, hugging strangers like lifelong friends, receiving compliments with the grace of a practiced queen. She hadn't seen me yet, or maybe she had, and was pretending otherwise. Either way, I stayed still. It wasn't long before my mother spotted me. She was dressed in navy chiffon, hair perfectly curled, pearls practically choking her. Her eyes locked on mine for less than a second. She blinked, turned away, and whispered something to the woman next to her. Not a wave, not a nod, just erasure. I shouldn't have been surprised. This was the same woman who once told a family friend I'd dropped out of college to find myself in the mountains. She made it sound spiritual. It wasn't. I was surviving boot camp in desert heat, vomiting between drills, learning how to field strip an M4 in 30 seconds. But that wasn't dinner party appropriate. I took a slow sip of water. It burned more than whiskey. At one point, the photographer passed by and gestured toward our table. "Anyone want a group shot?" he asked, half smiling. I waved him off. The uncle next to me burped. The florist ignored him. The photographer didn't even press the shutter. The air grew thicker as speeches began. Laughter echoed. Applause followed every sugary word. I watched, silent, unnoticed, a presence without weight. Until Emily took the mic. That's when the room hushed, all eyes on her, cameras up, spotlight centered. And for the first time in years, I braced myself, not for gunfire, not for an ambush, but for something more brutal. Recognition. Emily stood at the center of the ballroom, glowing like a chandelier made of secrets. She tapped the mic twice, sharp little clicks that sliced through the murmurs, and smiled. The kind of smile she'd mastered over the years. Sweet, polished, lethal. "First of all," she began, "thank you to everyone who came from near and far, especially those who showed up unexpectedly." She didn't look at me, but the pause did. The crowd chuckled, polite, confused. "It means a lot to have family here," she continued, her voice syrupy. Even the ones who prefer the shadows. That one landed. A few people glanced in my direction, unsure why. I didn't move. We may not all take the same path. Some of us build lives, some disappear. But love has a way of bringing people together again. Pause, tilt of the head, even if just for the drama. Applause, laughter, even the DJ smirked. I kept my hands folded in my lap, let them clap. Emily always knew how to perform. Her stage wasn't just this ballroom, it had been our entire childhood, and I'd been cast as the antagonist in a play I never auditioned for. She closed with a toast. To new beginnings, and to letting the past stay where it belongs, far behind us. The room erupted in cheers, glasses clinked. Someone near me muttered, "She's savage." Another voice, "I didn't even know she had a sister." I smiled, barely, not bitter, not angry, just amused. Let her have her moment. Let her think I was still the girl from the back row, the one too ashamed to speak. What she didn't know was this. I wasn't here to be seen. I was here to watch. Because when the curtain fell, and it always did, I'd be the one still standing. The champagne was flowing now, fast, golden, reckless. People loosened their ties, kicked off heels, drifted into groupings that blurred into noise and light, but not me. I sat at table 19, the unofficial island for people no one really wanted to talk to. Then came the second wave. It started subtly, like gossip always does. 2 women at the table behind me leaned in. "She's her sister, right?" "I think so. Didn't she join the army or something?" "No, not the army. She's like a guard or janitor or something. My husband says she works at the base near Fayetteville." "That's rough." "Well, not everyone can be Emily." I took another sip of water. Room temperature, still sharper than their words. At the far end of the room, Emily laughed at something Matt said. His hand grazed her waist with mechanical affection. He looked relaxed, or maybe just practiced. A man in a navy suit, older, expensive watch, voice like gravel, approached my table. I didn't recognize him. He didn't offer a name. "Jessica, right?" he asked, leaning in too close. I nodded once. "Heard you work security at some base. That must be steady. Must feel weird being back with all this glamour, huh?" I blinked slowly. "You have no idea." He chuckled like I'd made a joke. "Hey, nothing wrong with honest work. At least you're not stuck at a desk all day, right?" He winked, patted my shoulder, and walked away before I could respond, as if that counted as kindness. As if his condescension had somehow earned him moral credit. It wasn't that they pitied me. That would have been too generous. They dismissed me. And that cut deeper. Because dismissal is invisible violence. It doesn't bleed. It lingers. Somewhere behind me, someone whispered, "Is she even invited?" Another voice, "Maybe she crashed," for attention. I closed my eyes, briefly, not to escape, to breathe, in, out. I'd walked through gunfire quieter than this. But that's the thing about weddings. People feel safe being cruel when they think the music will drown them out. What they didn't realise was that I hadn't come for celebration. I'd come for the reckoning. Dinner was served, filet mignon, fingerling potatoes, roasted asparagus. Everything plated like a magazine cover, except mine never came. I watched every guest at table 19 receive their meals while I sat with a folded napkin and a forced smile. The server passed me twice, once with bread, once with wine, both times skipping my seat without hesitation. I could have said something, I didn't. I wanted to see how long it would take before someone noticed. No one did. Instead, they leaned over me, literally. A guy in a green vest reached for the butter dish with a casual, "Excuse me, hun," then kept talking to the woman beside him like I wasn't there. Somewhere across the room, I saw Rachel again. Coral dress, glass of rosé, mouth moving rapidly. Her eyes darted to me once, then away. Her smirk lingered. That's when I heard it. Guess she's used to standing in corners, huh? It wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. The laughter that followed was. Table 14 erupted. A clump of women, one of them wearing a fascinator like she'd wandered in from a royal wedding. Another mimed a salute with 2 fingers and said, "At ease, soldier." More laughter. Someone added, "Bet she could choke a man with a zip tie." Maybe that's why she doesn't have one. The jokes kept piling. I wasn't in on them. I was them. It was Emily who made it official. She glided toward table 14, caught the tail end of the laughter, and tilted her head as if confused. "What are we laughing at?" One woman pointed discreetly toward me. Emily turned, slow, practiced, and let her eyes land on me for the first time all night. Her expression didn't falter. Not surprise, not warmth, just calculation. She gave a tight smile, then looked back at the group and said, "Oh, that's just Jess. She always takes things seriously. Military types. Beat. She means well." That stung more than any insult because it was disguised as grace, as sisterly forgiveness, as understanding. But it was a dismissal, an elegant execution, the kind that doesn't need blood to feel fatal. They brought out the microphone again for family sharing time, a quaint tradition Emily insisted on, where relatives were invited to stand and offer anecdotes, blessings, or humorous memories. The first to speak was Uncle Brian, slightly tipsy, talking about Emily's obsession with ponies as a child. Then Aunt Valerie, who compared the couple to a perfect soufflé, delicate but rich. People clapped. A few tears were wiped. The mood was syrupy sweet. Then Emily cleared her throat and held the mic. "Before we wrap this up," she said, "there's one more person I'd love to invite to say a few words." My heart didn't race. It froze. My sister, Jessica. Heads turned. The spotlight shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Every eye in the room now scanned, trying to find me. Some hadn't realized I was there until that moment. I didn't move. I didn't stand. Emily smiled, all dimples and innocence. She came all this way, which, let's be honest, was a surprise for everyone. But we're so glad she's here. She's had quite a journey. Life took her to some tough places, some of them in camo. Pause for laughter. But family's about showing up, right? Even if it's just once every decade. Scattered chuckles, nervous glances. She waited. The silence stretched. I stood, but didn't go forward. I simply said, "No thanks," loud enough to reach the mic. Gasps. A few raised brows. Someone whispered, "Wow." Emily chuckled. "Classic Jess. Always so modest." Then she turned to the crowd. "She's tough. That's what I admire about her. Even when things were hard, she kept herself distant. Disciplined. Never cried, never hugged, very military." It wasn't what she said. It was how she made it true to them. How easily she shaped me into the caricature they'd already accepted, cold, distant, broken in some unrevealed way. I sat back down. I could have said everything, but I said nothing. Because sometimes letting people underestimate you isn't weakness. It's strategy. I found the restroom not because I needed it, but because I needed out. Out of the smiles, the music, the clinking glassware that felt more like swords than celebration. The bathroom was empty, mercifully. Gold-trimmed mirrors, polished marble, a vase of orchids that looked fake and probably cost more than my rent. I leaned over the sink and stared into my own eyes. Still there. Still standing. But something had shifted. My fingers shook. Not from rage, but from a kind of betrayal too old to be fresh and too raw to be scarred over. Because when Emily had called me out in front of everyone, it wasn't just about the humiliation. It was that Matt, he, didn't stop her. He stood beside her, smiling politely, hands folded in front of him like a damn groomsman to her ego. The same man who had once bled on desert sand while I applied pressure with one hand and fired warning shots with the other. The same man who once whispered, "You're the bravest person I've ever met," when we sat under a shredded tarp in Afghanistan, eating stale granola bars. And now, He let her reduce me to a punchline. No objection, no hesitation, not even a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. That stung more than Emily's words, more than the crowd's laughter, because Matt had known me, and he'd still chosen her. Or maybe he'd just chosen the easier life. The clean one, the kind where the woman on his arm wore heels, not boots, and never reminded him of blood-soaked sand. I pressed my palms against the sink, breathed, in, out. A voice behind me startled me. "Didn't think I'd see you here." I turned. It was Rachel, again, clutching a makeup pouch, but not even pretending to apply anything. "You okay?" she asked, voice a little too smooth. I nodded. "Just needed a minute." She stepped closer. "You know, not everyone meant to be cruel. It's just Emily's big day, and you did kind of ghost the whole family." I raised an eyebrow. "Thanks for the insight." She blinked. "I mean, some of us were surprised to see you. We thought, well, with everything that happened back then, I don't know, maybe you'd moved on." "I did," I said quietly. "You just never caught up." She had no response. I left her standing there, surrounded by orchids and echoes. And as I stepped back into the reception hall, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a war zone. Only this time the shrapnel was made of words, and no one here would ever see the blood. When I returned to table 19, my chair was gone, literally. Someone had taken it, maybe the catering crew, maybe another guest who needed a seat closer to the dance floor. Either way, no one noticed, or pretended not to. I stood there for a beat, then quietly pulled over a folding chair from against the wall and sat down. The music thumped louder now, something pop and forgettable. People danced, laughed, stumbled around on too many cocktails, and not enough conviction. It was a celebration, sure, but it felt more like a stage play with too many understudies and no director. Then came a small voice. "Are you the one who flew the helicopters?" I looked down. A girl, maybe 6, stood beside me in a white flower girl dress, one shoe off, holding a juice box like it was a trophy. Her curls were wild, her eyes wide. "Excuse me?" I asked gently. She sat beside me, on the floor, no hesitation. "My mom said you used to fly helicopters. In the army or something. Did you?" I nodded. "Sometimes. Not always." Her face lit up. "That's so cool. I want to do that too, but Mommy says girls aren't made for that stuff. She says I should learn piano instead." I smiled. First time all night. Girls are made for anything, especially helicopters. She grinned. "You don't look like a soldier." "Good," I said. "Soldiers don't all look the same." "Did you shoot bad guys?" I paused. "Sometimes, but mostly I helped people get home." She nodded, as if that was the better answer. "I think you're cooler than Emily." That one caught me off guard. "You know Emily? She yelled at me earlier because I spilled juice. She said I was clumsy, but you're nice." She leaned her head on my arm, sticky, warm, and just like that, the sharp edges of the night dulled. The laughter in the background faded, the weight lifted, just a little. "Can you come to my birthday?" she asked. "I don't even know your name." "I'm Lily." "Then maybe Lily," I said. "You can fly the next one, and I'll just be your passenger." She beamed. And in that moment, surrounded by people who'd erased me, I was finally seen, by the only soul in the room who didn't need to be impressed to believe, not by medals, not by uniforms, just by kindness. And that was enough, for now. I didn't notice the shift right away. It started with a name. From across the room, someone, maybe the DJ, maybe the wedding planner, tapped the mic and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could have your attention for just a moment. We have a special guest here today, someone the groom would like to personally acknowledge." I froze, not because I thought they meant me, but because Matt had disappeared from Emily's side. I hadn't seen him in over an hour. He'd gone off after the toasts, probably to cool off or pose for another round of pictures in the vineyard. But now he stood at the head of the room, holding the microphone, his suit jacket slightly wrinkled, his tie loosened, and his expression unreadable. "Before we move into dancing," he began, "I wanted to take a moment to recognize someone who's here tonight." Emily's smile was glued in place. She didn't come for attention, she didn't come to be celebrated, but she deserves more recognition than anyone else in this room, including me. A murmur rippled through the guests. I didn't move. Then he said it. "Colonel Jessica Ann Miles." Silence. Real silence. Not the polite kind, not the awkward kind, the kind that punches the oxygen out of a room. Every head turned. Mine stayed still. "Most of you don't know this," Matt continued, "but 13 years ago I was stationed in Kandahar. Our convoy was hit, I was wounded, trapped, and the woman who pulled me out, under fire, under mortar blasts, under the kind of chaos that replays in your sleep for years, was sitting right here, behind you all, at table 19. A few people turned in their seats. She didn't just save me. She led her team to hold off 2 waves of enemy fire until the medevac arrived. She was 25 years old, and she never once asked for credit. I felt Lily's small hand find mine again under the table. My pulse didn't race, my chest didn't swell. I just listened as the room stared, as Emily's face began to change, slowly, subtly, like paint cracking on porcelain. Matt kept going. That night, I wrote a letter. I never knew if she read it. I never got a reply. But today, before I say my vows, I wanted to say something first. He paused. The entire ballroom leaned forward. "Thank you, Jess, for saving my life, and for showing me what courage really looks like." He raised his glass. "To Colonel Miles." The crowd was still for a second, confused, hesitant. Then someone clapped, then more. Then all at once the ballroom broke into applause, slow, reluctant, but growing. And for the first time all evening, I didn't feel invisible. The applause faded slowly, like waves retreating from shore, unsure whether to return. Matt stepped down from the platform, but instead of going back to Emily, he walked toward me, each step louder than the last. Emily's smile cracked. Not much, but enough. Matt stopped beside table 19. "May I?" I looked up. He wasn't smiling. His voice wasn't performative. This wasn't for the crowd anymore. I nodded. He knelt. The room sucked in breath. From the inside of his jacket, he pulled something wrapped in a small velvet cloth. He unwrapped it slowly, methodically, and revealed what was inside. The silver star. My silver star. The one I had been awarded but never picked up in person. The one that had been mailed to my former CO when I extended my deployment instead of attending the ceremony. The one I had left behind, boxed, unopened, untouched. "I've held this for 10 years, Matt said softly, hoping someday you'd let me give it back to you, properly." I didn't answer. My throat locked. He rose, placed the medal gently on the table in front of me, and stepped back, not to return to Emily, but to the centre of the ballroom. He took the mic again. "I know today is meant for celebration, for joy, but I also believe in truth, and there's something else I need to say before I make any vow." Emily stiffened. Her hands clenched the back of a chair. "This woman, Jess, was once my teammate, my protector, but more than that, for a brief moment in my life, she was my compass." Silence again. "We spent one night together during deployment, just one. But I've carried it with me for years, not because of what happened, but because of what didn't." Emily's face drained of colour. Matt turned toward me again. "I wrote you a letter. You never responded, so I assumed you'd moved on, that you wanted distance, that maybe it meant more to me than to you." I didn't blink. But I also never told Emily. That did it. A gasp from someone near the head table. Emily took a step back, her mouth slightly open. Matt continued, "I thought I could forget it. That time would sort it out, but it never did. And now..." He paused, his voice low, nearly cracking. Now I wonder if I came here to get married, or to find closure. Someone dropped a glass. No one clapped. And this time, no one looked at me with pity, only fear, because truth is louder than humiliation. And when it arrives, it doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. The room felt airless, no music, no clinking glasses, just the weight of exposure pressing down like humidity before a storm. Emily stood frozen, still beautiful, still poised, but stripped of the untouchable glow she'd worn like armour all evening. And in that rawness, I saw it. Panic. She took a step forward, then another, her voice shaky but sharp. So, what, Matt? You're ruining our wedding because of a letter from 13 years ago? Because you're still playing soldier with her? He didn't answer. She turned to me next. And you sit there all quiet, letting everyone think you're some kind of martyr. You want this attention? Fine. You want him? Take him. She gestured dramatically, like flinging a curse. Maybe that's what this was all about. You couldn't stand not being the centre of the story. Still, I said nothing. That's what shattered her. Because bullies expect resistance. They crave it. They feed on it. But silence? Silence is sovereign. It cannot be dragged down. It doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't flinch. It leaves the accuser screaming into a vacuum and realizing how small their voice sounds without applause. Emily's mask slipped further. Don't act like you're better than me, she hissed, voice cracking now. You left. You abandoned this family. You disappeared when I needed you. And that almost made me laugh. Almost. But instead I stood, slowly, not to confront her, just to leave. I reached for the silver star Matt had placed on the table, gently folded the velvet around it, and tucked it into my bag. No eye contact, no theatrics. As I passed Emily, I paused, not for drama, but for mercy. You never needed me, I said softly. You just needed someone to stand beneath you. Her face crumpled like a dress too tight to breathe in. I walked toward the exit. The crowd parted. No applause, no whispers now, just eyes, some filled with shame, others with something new, respect. And behind me, I heard a sound no one expected at a wedding, not a toast, not laughter, but the sound of a bride crying alone in a room full of people who finally saw who she really was. Outside, the air was cool, cooler than it had any right to be in June. I walked slowly, each step quieter than the last, heels sinking gently into the gravel path leading away from the estate. The sky above was lavender and bruised, like it had watched too much pain unfold and didn't know how to colour itself anymore. I could hear voices inside, urgent, layered, confused. Matt didn't follow me, neither did Emily. Good, because this wasn't about reconciliation. It never had been. I wasn't there to ruin their wedding. They had done that all by themselves. I made it to my car and slid into the driver's seat. The cabin smelled like old leather and rain. I sat in silence, staring at my own hands on the steering wheel, the velvet-wrapped medal still clutched loosely in my fingers. I could have stayed. I could have watched it all fall apart. But war teaches you one thing above all: know when to leave the battlefield. I didn't need revenge, didn't need to see Emily crack, didn't need Matt's regret in the shape of a second glance. Because in walking away, I had already won. I'd taken their silence and turned it into a mirror, and they didn't like what they saw. The passenger door opened suddenly. I reached instinctively for the base of my spine, reflex, but it wasn't danger. It was Lily, still in her flower girl dress, still barefoot, still clutching her juice box. You forgot this, she said, holding up a small envelope. White, handwritten. I blinked. Where did you get that? Some lady with red lipstick gave it to me and said, give this to the soldier lady, but don't read it, it's boring grown-up stuff. Red lipstick. Emily. I took the envelope carefully. Lily climbed in beside me, uninvited, just sat there like she belonged. Are we going on a mission? She asked. Not tonight, I said softly. Tonight's just a drive. Can I come anyway? I glanced at her, this fearless, sticky-fingered, honest little human who saw more clearly than any adult in that cursed ballroom. Yeah, Lily, I said. You can come. She beamed, kicked her feet up, and buckled her seatbelt like a pro. As I started the engine, I looked down at the envelope in my lap. Emily's handwriting, slanted, sharp, still trying to control the narrative. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because some letters don't deserve to be read in moments of power. They deserve to wait until you're safe. And I was finally safe. I waited until the highway swallowed the lights of the estate before pulling into a rest stop. Lily was asleep, curled in the passenger seat, her tiny hand still holding the corner of her dress like a blanket. I stepped out, let the night air settle over my skin, and opened the envelope. Inside, a single sheet. No greeting, no flourish. Just ink. Just her. Jess, if you're reading this, it means you stayed longer than I thought. Or maybe you never left like I always said you did. I won't apologize, not in the way you want. Because what I did to you wasn't a mistake. I stopped reading for a breath, then continued. I knew you didn't take the money. I knew it was me. I took it. I lied. I watched Mom slap you and say your name like it was dirt. And I didn't speak up. Not because I hated you. Because I knew she loved you more. That line hit like a gut punch in slow motion. I saw it. The way she looked at your report cards. The way she tried to act like your medals didn't matter. The way she'd say, Emily needs more attention, Jessica's fine. You were the fire she couldn't control, and I was the one she could dress in pink and parade in front of guests. I sat down on the curb, letting the words bleed out onto my hands. Matt didn't know I knew about Kandahar. I found the letter. I read it. I kept it. Because I needed to win, even if it meant marrying a man who loved a ghost more than me. This wedding wasn't about love. It was about proving I could still steal something from you. But you ruined it, not by yelling, not by fighting. By being everything I never could. There was a pause in the ink, a smudge, maybe a tear. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know one thing. All these years you thought I erased you. But the truth is, I've only ever been chasing you. No name signed, no love, Emily. Just the bitter confession of a girl who spent her life performing for a mother who never clapped and hating the sister who never needed an audience. I folded the letter back, not out of sentiment, out of closure. And as I slid behind the wheel again, Lily stirred beside me and whispered, "Are we still going?" I started the engine. "Yeah," I said. "Now we really are." And this time, I didn't look back. We drove all night. No destination, just distance. Lily slept most of the way, one hand tangled in her curls, the other still loosely holding her juice box like a flag of surrender. I didn't know where she thought we were going, and I didn't ask. By dawn, I pulled into a diner just off Route 74, chrome booths, fluorescent lights, a jukebox stuck on a Conway Twitty loop. We sat in silence. She ordered pancakes. I ordered black coffee. "Are we fugitives?" she asked suddenly. I blinked. "What? Like, did we steal anything? Did we escape?" I smiled. "We didn't steal. We just walked away." "Oh," she nodded, mouth full of syrup. "That's way cooler." After breakfast, I dropped her back at the estate's outer gate. I didn't go in. A woman, probably her aunt or nanny, waited with frantic eyes and a phone in hand. Lily ran to her without hesitation. She didn't look back, and that was fine. She didn't owe me anything. Some people are just passing constellations in your night sky, bright, fast, unforgettable, and gone. I watched them disappear into the distance, then turned the car around, no destination still, but lighter now. As if a pressure I didn't know I was carrying had finally slipped off my shoulders in the shape of a 6-year-old with sticky fingers and truth in her voice. That's the thing about wounds. Some scream when they're made, others just whisper for years until one day they stop. 3 days later, I was home. Not the house I grew up in. That place had long stopped being home, not the base either. That was duty. I mean my home. A small bungalow in a quiet town where no one asked questions and the mail always came late. The porch creaked, the faucet leaked, but it was mine, paid off, no ghosts. I stood in the doorway for a long time before entering. Not because I was afraid, because I wasn't sure who I was walking in as. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, took off my shoes, sat on the floor instead of the couch. The silence was soft. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried, not loud, not collapsed in grief, just quietly. It wasn't for Emily, or Matt, or my mother. It was for the version of me who never got to be anything but strong, who never got to fall apart because someone had to hold the line. It was for the girl who folded her own uniform, who gave away her softness to survive in places where softness was a liability, who was told she was too quiet, too cold, too distant, when really she was just trying not to break in front of the wrong people. And maybe, most of all, it was for the peace I had mistaken for weakness for far too long. That night, I didn't check my phone, didn't open email, didn't respond to the one missed call from Matt or the 3 from a North Carolina number I didn't recognize. I just made tea, sat on the porch, and let the world keep turning without me for once. Because healing isn't dramatic, it's subtle. It's folding laundry to your favorite song. It's not flinching when the doorbell rings. It's waking up and not bracing for impact. And on that night, in the stillness of a home no one ever gifted me, I realized something simple. I wasn't waiting anymore, not to be invited back, not to be proven right, not to be seen. I already was, by myself. And finally, that was enough. A week passed, no headlines, no fallout, just a quiet unravelling. I heard from Rachel through a mutual acquaintance. Emily and Matt postponed their honeymoon. Rumours spread. Some said they'd separated. Others said they were working through things. I didn't care. That wasn't my weight anymore. One morning, I opened the velvet pouch and held the silver star in my hand. It was heavier than I remembered. Cold at first, then warm, like it had been waiting for skin to touch it again. I didn't mount it, didn't frame it. I placed it in a small wooden box with no label, tucked it between my discharge papers and a photograph of my old unit, not because I needed to hide it, but because I no longer needed it to prove anything. There was a time when medals defined me. Now they didn't even define a drawer. That afternoon I went to the farmer's market, bought fresh strawberries, helped an old woman lift her groceries, let a child cut in front of me for a free sample. No one knew my name, no one whispered about a wedding, no one asked where I'd been. It was perfect, anonymous, free. At home, I opened a blank notebook and started to write. Not a report, not a log, not a letter I'd never send, just a sentence. I left quietly, but I left whole. Then another. I was not rescued, I rescued myself. Then I stopped. Not because the story was over, but because for once it didn't have to end in fire or blood or silence. It could end in sunlight, in coffee without shaking hands, in sleep without dreams, in the soft, steady beat of a heart that finally belonged to me again.